Well, good morning, everybody. It is awesome to be here in Indianapolis. Thank you very much to the leadership team here at ACCA for pulling this together. It's such an important, thank you. It's all good. Melissa's like a full service leader. It's such an important convening for the industry, and it's so great to meet a lot of people from across the country doing such important work on behalf of customers. I'm Wyatt Smith. I'm the founder and CEO at UpSmith. Our mission is to combat the skilled labor crisis that's facing employers all across the United States. We do so working with some of the best home service companies across the land, and several of them are up here right now, as well as people here in the state of Indiana that are doing really critical work on workforce. We're going to spend about the next 30 or so minutes in a conversation with each of them about some really important initiatives that they're leading that could be really interesting and relevant for those of you in the room. And then we'll have some time for Q&A. So if you hear things that you want to dig deeper into or questions on your mind, save those for sharing with the panel as we proceed. So we'll dive right in. On behalf of our team, it's really cool to be up here with leaders that are thinking in innovative ways about workforce. Jeff McLanahan at ARS certainly is among the most preeminent of those. Jeff, would you talk a little bit about ARS Rescue Router's vision on workforce development, how you're investing directly in a new generation of skilled workers?
Sure. So just like one of the central themes that I've heard all day yesterday, we have the same challenges, shortage of skilled workforce. So one of the things that we did and just mentioned this morning is we're starting to build our own. We are training our own. We are and we are looking for folks that would not necessarily be people that would be looking to work in the trades. We started our own HVAC maintenance training program a little over a year ago. We partnered with several companies. One of those was Wyatt and his team at UpSmith, and they sourced candidates for us that you would not normally hire. I mean, they may have had some mechanical aptitude, but they were not, some of them were bartenders. I'll just put it that way. We created this program to draw in folks who would normally not be looking, as I said, and we provided paid training. And I'll tell you, one of the things that was really sort of eye-opening for us is when we decided to provide paid training and we got away from just running the ads that Jeff Butler shared yesterday, Wyatt and his team went out and sourced these candidates. Some of them just couldn't believe it, thought maybe it was kind of a scam, right? So you're going to pay me for 8 to 10 weeks to train, and then, give me a job. Yeah. So, we had to overcome that. But, we're in that same boat. We need to bring in new people and we need to retain the people that we have. So we've started this program, like I said, over a year ago. We've run 5 of those, probably an average of 15 techs per. It started out as an 8-week training program. We have since changed it to a 10-week program. It's a mixture of classroom training, it's lab training, and it's on-the-job training. We have had to invest. We had to build out some classrooms. These sessions are held in various geographic locations based on our needs. So they're held in a branch, typically. So we had to build out some classroom facilities. We certainly had to invest in our labs. We needed to make sure that was standard equipment that supported our curriculum. And we needed to make sure that the people that were providing the on-the-job training were actually doing it the way that we wanted them to do it. But I will say, Wyatt, that as you're aware, we've had some outstanding results.
Totally. It turns out that a person that's been a bartender is a pretty good read of people and is pretty good at building trust with a homeowner at their doorstep.
Absolutely.
We released a case study this morning about the impact of some of that work across in Maryland specifically. Would you share a little bit about some of the highlights?
Oh, yeah, sure. We had a class of 14 or 15 techs that graduated from a training class we did on the East Coast. These techs primarily went to work in the Laurel and Baltimore area. I'm not going to lie that there is a significant investment we have, but we found that they paid that return in as early as 2 months, on average about 4 months. We have techs that have been out of the training for 3 or 4 months now that are earning the same amount as tenured techs. We have a couple of techs that are earning 25% more. And we have one tech who is featured in the case study who's earning 2 times what tenured techs are. And we're very happy with it. And we have plans to continue investing in this Build a Tech program.
I think his revenue production for 1 month was more than all the sourcing costs for all the people combined.
Yeah.
But it speaks to the power potential, which is what this panel is all about this morning. Eddie, at Sila, you're focused on the same problem, and you're working really hard around investing in credentialing. Would you share a little bit about your vision for that?
Yeah, happy to. And thanks for having us. And thanks for being here this morning for part of a conversation that feels like we've been having for 20 years. So it's like to learn from some of these guys. So I've been in the trades the last 20 years. I am the byproduct of a program like that. We were swapping war stories earlier. And I was not the kid taking the toaster apart or getting hot rods with my dad. Or I think it was lefty loosey, righty tighty. I think I got it. But I know the impact that had on me and my family. And, I believe that the trades do more to break generational poverty than many other programs out there. And so, it's an easy story to tell when you've lived it. So we've done in my past lives, we've done our versions of school and ran programs like that. But I think we're at an interesting inflection point with the advent of some of the new technologies. I'll call them wave 2, where we've had the disparate sort of tools, and thank you to our sponsors, that have helped us and will use. But how do we create an engaging experience that's frictionless for these people that want to come in, that have heard there's a good story? And then on another level, the people that we actually want to use these tools, the service manager that just happened to be the best service tech, the install manager that just happened to be, not necessarily the fully evolved sort of 360 leader that Angie was talking about yesterday. We have to make it as easy for them. Most of us learn in the trades and get promoted sort of, I liken it to the equivalent of if our parents taught us to drive by tossing us the car keys, telling us don't bring it back scratched, and last office on the left is yours. And maybe I'm crazy. Maybe there's a better way of doing that. And so I think the integration of great people, a great story, and great technology that actually does a lot of the low value work that needs to be done for managers that are overtasked, oversaturated, so that during the period where we've had people that are successful, we can take the accreditation tools and have the manager who is set up for success with all the relevant KPIs and information and a learning path forward provided to them. We have a service tech that's eager to be coached, but you got to tell me something other than I suck.
Yeah.
Scottish, sorry.
Good strategy.
Well, we can polish it a little bit, but that's if we don't have good information, I think we've been in a period where we're data rich, but information poor. We've got KPIs and dashboards and stuff, but how do we actually turn that information into actionable, a learning path forward where I can improve and come back next week and get more? And so I think that's the advent of where the integration of different technologies and trackable, actionable metrics and accreditations that we're looking forward to. And I see us moving more now.
Yeah. Follow people through time. That's awesome. Well, we're very fortunate to have Tony Denhart here, who's a leader for workforce development for the state of Indiana. Thank you, Tony, for welcoming us all to the Hoosier State. Would you speak a bit about how important skilled trades are to the future of Indiana?
That's a loaded question. It's going to take a long time, but just a quick question. First off, Wyatt, thank you for the opportunity, and thank all of you for being here today. By a show of hands, how many of you are from Indiana?
Woo!
Okay. I joined IADC a little bit over 20 months ago, and I think it's fair to share some facts here. When I started, former Secretary Chambers, now Secretary of Commerce Rosenberg, is very focused on going after what we want in the state of Indiana from an industry standpoint, not what just shows up on our doorstep. And I want to share some facts. We were talking earlier about, someone that comes into the trades as a technician can start their own company. I've seen many of those stories in many trades, and it's super exciting to see someone going from a tech to starting their company and really lifting that economic mobility for not only their family, but everyone that's working for them. Indiana was named number one, the best state in the U.S. to start a business by Forbes. So all of you out there and your teams, encourage them to grow this space. What's happened over the last 6 quarters? We've had a historic economic activity within the state at $33 billion in new committed capital investment like I said, in the last 6 quarters. If you step back in the past, that, attainment would have taken us 6 years. So why is that important? Whether it's the industry side or the residential side, your space is imperative. Let me say that again, imperative for the state of Indiana's success. And this is really building the future for our children, our grandchildren, and our great-grandchildren. And without you, your companies, the companies and workers that you're building, that technicians, I love the passion that the two of you have and what you're doing to build your trades, your workforce that will stick and stay versus we were talking earlier, kind of robbing from each other, right? But you're building the future. And it is imperative that you keep doing the great work you're doing because we need those homes. September 6th, this was a little surprise in tech. There's a big, a lot of investments that's being made in the electric vehicle battery manufacturing space in the state of Indiana. Intech had the groundbreaking on September 6th for a $1.5 billion lithium battery separator, which will feed into the supply chain. Larry, the CEO, was talking about, the need for HVAC techs. And he said, so let me be straight. Let me be crystal clear. We need a lot because that temperature in that environment has to stay steady state. And they're bringing, 650 workers to the greater Terre Haute area. So there's a lot of homes that will be built. But again, your trades are imperative to the future for the success in the state of Indiana, really around the country.
Wow. That's awesome. That's great momentum. Stephanie is a leader with Ascend Indiana and very focused on workforce development. You're promoting really great outcomes for adult learners and economic opportunity for all as a part of your mission. Would you share a little bit about how you do that?
Yeah, sure. Well, again, thanks for having me, Wyatt. This is an incredible panel, so I'm really excited to be here with you. I want to pull on what Eddie said, actually, because I think it's the reason that Ascend exists. He used the word frictionless, and how do we actually create better connection between industry or education or the right training providers to make sure that we can create that sector-based approach or that industry-led strategy, because you guys are doing your day-to-day work. And really what Ascend was created to do, we're a nonprofit, but we are business-led. So we are part of what's called the Central Indiana Corporate Partnership. That's the CEOs of the largest companies in Central Indiana. You have education, all represented on that. And they said, we need a more frictionless workforce system. We need more support with talent and workforce development. So we were created to be that. So we were created to go out and try to support industry in creating talent pipelines and creating direct connections to industry and talent so that we can actually make Indiana a place of economic opportunity, fill those amazing jobs that Tony is going out and getting with incredible people here. And I just want to touch on, I think, something that's really important. They told us, don't, bring a bunch of stuff here. Just do something practical and get us talent in the door. So that was really our charge when we got started. And we started out by building a tech platform that's called the Ascend Network that actually just connects talent directly to internships, apprenticeships, and jobs. If you live here, if you know Indiana, then we have a whole bunch of folks that come here to go to school at various different locations. We are really focused on how do you get those folks out of education and into the workforce, and to just really understand what the great jobs are that are here. We've had over 3,500 connections just through that tech platform alone. So we're really excited about what that means. It's a very practical solution, but in certain sectors, and you heard our friends down here talking about it, we just don't produce enough of that talent. And that's really where our team comes in. We are the support resource to you and your sector to figure out how you can sort of operationalize these strategies. Sometimes it is building your own employer-led training program. And you heard, I wish I could put Jeff and Eddie on every testimonial that there is around workforce.
Me too, yeah.
Because
we'll talk after.
That's right. Because what they are saying is spot on. It is the wave of the future for talent and workforce development. But some of you might be thinking, well, I don't know if I'm big enough. I don't know if I have everything I need to be able to do this. And that's really where we can come in and try to provide that support to you to say, how do you bring business together? I know we talked about poaching a little bit down here already. How do we not poach? How do we build a sector? Because if we all work together, the cost goes down for each person, each business to be able to do it. And then look, if you poach, well, look, y'all trained. So if somebody goes somewhere else, you know what they're getting and you're able to build a much larger talent pool. That's a lot of what we do on our team. And then another piece of it, and you heard statistics up here, is really publishing back out to our constituents and our employer partners what's going on in your sector. So partnering with research institutions and employers to say, where are those shortages? Are they at the entry level, the mid-level, the experience level? And then helping sectors design strategies to be able to address, meet them where they are within each of those. Just want to touch on one case study because it actually is very similar, but yours is in your industry, so it's better. But we partnered with Advanced Manufacturing in Indiana. If you don't know, it's a massive industry here. We are the crossroads of America, so we are constantly building and making things here. And what we learned when we did that sector-based strategy with the employers all at the table was that we actually didn't have enough entry points for manufacturing. We didn't have enough entry-level training that was inspiring young people and adults, that was getting them excited about their aptitudes and their abilities to do this work. So we partnered with what's called Connexus Indiana. They're another talent initiative that focuses on the manufacturing sector, built a 6 to 8 week training program called Catapult. And now they've had hundreds, I think over 600 people go through that program. The IDC and others have sponsored that program, but 70% retention, 90% placement, and you're getting a pre-vetted candidate that has a baseline set of training and skills. So when they come to you, you're really just focused on making sure they know how to work in your specific business or industry. And so I just want to highlight, and you did a better job, but that's exactly the type of model that can be built. So if you're in Indiana, we're here to help. But if you're not in Indiana, this is a good strategy to think about. Where's that capacity? Where are there partners that are already doing some of this work, and how can you be a part of the solution?
Well said. Well said. So Eddie, I'm willing to bet that there's a few contractors in the room who might be thinking to themselves, this all sounds great. I feel a lot of pressure to grow revenue right now.
Right.
Interest rates have gone up. It's harder to be able to drive new system installs. People do what you measure and what you reward.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you think about technicians in the field and ways to promote and motivate performance, link it with training and give people the tools they need to drive more revenue, how do you think about that challenge, and what are some of the strategies that work best?
Well, first off, thank you for a super easy question.
Yeah.
So the reality is we all do run an operating business. For many of us, I think the challenge between the urgent and important is something we try and do better at every day. It's important to plant seeds and work towards the future, but that phone's ringing right now, and that delivery is late now. And so I think the it starts with a realistic evaluation of what can you do, what should you do. And we have a tendency to come to a conference like this and leave with a legal notepad full of things, and we want to do it all because it's all gold. But we got to pick one thing and commit to it and measure it and hold people accountable to it, and then get a win and start there. So I think making sure you understand what are your non-negotiables, because that's where we start, and then we look to just sort of increase the beachhead there. I think we all got to keep the cash flow going, but we got to make sure that I say, if you spend your whole day putting out fires, that's fine, but sooner or later you should probably go find the arsonist, and that's probably us, and I think having an honest evaluation about our skills. Coming to ACCA is important. Supporting ACCA is important. But then so is running our business. And so coming here, learning from a panel like this, learning from the people at our table this morning, and then executing. We were talking about, we live in the information age. None of us have build a tech. Great. Revolutionary. Do it. It's the execution that we lack. And I think understanding what you can capably do, being responsible about the goal you set, resourcing that plan. And it doesn't start with one. Start with one. You don't need a big building. Start with one. Figure out the best way to bring someone on and create a viable employee.
Yep.
Go crazy. Get two. It's, there's that quote, you start where you are with what you got, and do what you can, where you can. But it's really start. If you look at everybody successful, it's execution. That's the big thing that separates us. But it starts with a realistic analysis of what we're capable of, a no BS assessment of us, our deficiencies, and just write it down. Tell 3 people to hold you accountable and do one thing. Break it down.
Yeah, that's good advice. Jeff, I know one thing you're committed to doing has been investing in training, and specifically around learning and employment records, these digital credentials that you're using to show people's success. What's the business impact you're seeing? You've done over 300 of these in the last year. What's the takeaway?
Yeah, so I guess one of the things that we don't do a good job of, the industry, is just telling people our stories and telling people what we do. Stephanie, I'm actually commented or shared a post on LinkedIn a couple of days ago that talked about if you started as an apprentice and then 4 years in versus going to college, and where you would be financially versus where you would be with debt. We don't tell those stories, and we should. Right. Eddie and I were talking, and we were talking about, days when we were working in kitchens, and food service. And we come here and we're like, how can you have a problem hiring people? We pay $7.25 an hour. You're paying $20 an hour. What? So we are using these LERs or, this credentialing, and we are using those to help tell our stories. We are creating these credentials around programs that we have. We set our own thresholds. We use a platform called Certifier with an S. There's a ton of them out there. And you create your own logos for your programs. We chose a minimum of 15 hours worth of rigor that has to be associated with the program. And when we have technicians finish a program or we have managers finish a program, we issue them this credential. It can be shared on any social media platform. And if somebody wants to, if I issued a credential to Eddie, he shared it, somebody can actually click directly on it and they can see the 50 hours worth of work that he did to get this, right? And we're trying to help tell those stories. We're early in. We've done it for about a year, about 300. One of the programs we offered is for our frontline management program. Those managers share it the day that they get it. We're sharing it with techs. We're working with them. Some of them, you say LinkedIn, and they're like linked in the chain. What is that?
So on the PS5?
Yeah, exactly. It's on the PS5. So we are working with them, but I can tell you that we have seen a boost in our retention rates because people are proud of it. They want people to know what they did. They're not just turning a wrench somewhere or dropping fries. They want people to know what they are doing, and it has boosted our retention. So, we're using some programs to get new people into the trades. We're also doing some things to keep the people that we already have.
I think that's super important. One of the things, see if this is familiar, you've got people at your company that are lifers, 12, 20, 30. They're going to be switching the lights out. They're the last one in the building. And you've got a few at that 5 to 7, and then you're doing good at bringing people in, but various levels of success. I think one of the issues we need to realize is whether you're a licensed there or not, there's this concept of apprentice or helper, a lead something or other, and then you sort of have to wait for a service manager to die or win the lottery or something, and for the sense of progress, because I think we need to do better at creating this sense of momentum and progress. Yes, you've been doing the same role, but you're not the same person. And finding ways to highlight. I watch tech spend so much time learning. They don't even know they're learning. They don't even know they're investing in themselves and getting better. They're just doing their work, And so creating these tangible, shareable, story moments where you can give them a high five and say, look, you're not the same person you were 2 years ago.
Right.
And whether it's about, work-related stuff, communication, finance, whatever, good for you. And then that's a story that becomes your culture, because you're a place where, and really we're just talking about putting a label on some of the things many of you guys are already doing and creating a thing about it, a logo. Go on Fiverr, pay someone $20, get a logo, call it a thing. Now you have a program. See me at the table at the back. No,
I want to add one thing. I mean, just another question. How many of you are from the Midwest? Show of hands. Okay. What do we know? What's one of the traits that we're known for? Being humble, right? Not telling our story. And, I just throw one thing out to this audience. You two have talked about a number of great stories that probably aren't being told, right? Going back to your post that, you go into an apprenticeship program, start making money, have no debt. And, what's that doing for you? That's building your future so you can retire.
Yep.
Right. So, one thing maybe to think about or consider is what's that one or two stories that you could all share across your networks to help tell your story to lift up your industry. But we have to do a better job. And I literally mean we, the state of Indiana, companies, everyone, we have to do a better job of telling our story to bring awareness of those great opportunities in the trades and the HVAC, because, a lot of the kids today, a lot of the younger generations, they want to be home every night. Yep. In the trades and HVAC, there's some on the call stuff, but they can be home every night in their own bed with their family. So telling your story, I think, will help accelerate that.
Yeah, and Wyatt, don't tell me, I know we are going to run short on time. I love what you guys are saying. I think it's really important to know your audience too. So when I post something about wages, that works for a certain demographic of people. They are very concerned, right, about their wages. And I'm not saying young people aren't concerned about their wages. They are. But the things that I always say about young people, they want agency, which means they want choice and flexibility. They want impact. They want to know how they're changing the world. And the thing I think about the storytelling that's really important, this is a little cliche, you might have heard it before, but they interviewed a janitor at NASA and asked him what he was doing. And he talked about he was putting a man on the moon.
Putting a man on the moon.
Putting a man on the moon. And so I want to be clear that when I think about your sector, the story that I tell is that when I had my young babies at home, I have twin 7-year-olds now, but when they were about 8 months old, my HVAC went out and it was 53 degrees in my house and I had to find a way to get out. I called an emergency. There are stories to tell about the impact that your sector is making on individual families, on our buildings, on our industry. So it's about really understanding and pinpointing in those marketing campaigns where are those problems that you're trying to solve, what does your audience care about, and then telling stories that are able to get those either young people, those adults, those more experienced folks, whatever matters to them, you got a message to that. And I think this agency, impact, and autonomy is the third one. They want to know, and you're talking about it, you're saying let's value their skills. Let's show them a career path. They want that autonomy to know that they can move and that they can flex. And we can choose that we didn't have all of that in our career. We don't, have those things and people should just do what they're told to do, which is a little bit of sometimes how I feel about doing some of this work. But if we know that, then we can deal with it, right? And we can actually address strategies around it.
Eddie, you have a thought?
Yeah, so I want to challenge this room actually, because if you get two contractors in a room, all they do is tell stories. But they're like, oh, you think that's bad? Wow, I ran this call and, it's like, okay, it's, uphill both ways. I get it. I actually think we do tell a story, but we're not telling the story about the 30-year-old driving it up in the jacked up pickup with the wheels that are bigger than me. We're not telling about the lifestyle businesses. We're not talking about the people that have a cabin on the lake with the snow machines. We're not talking about the number of millionaires that were made in a relatively short time, just in the last 5-10 years. We see the stories, we know them. I just want, we need to, if we're not attracting the right audience, I would say listen for those and be the one that changes the story. Because we're telling them. If you spend 30 minutes at a family reunion talking about how tough it is being a contractor, don't be surprised if no one's showing up at your office Monday. Right?
True.
Yeah, stop talking about cleaning people's poop and stuff and start talking about, retiring with a living wage. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
That was good. Tony, there are a lot of people here that I'm sure are interested in ways to partner with the state of Indiana. You're very focused on workforce development. What are the programs that are out there? What are the bright spots you'd point to? Any case studies that you'd share?
So I'll share a few, and Wyatt, I'm happy to share more with you and share the information so you have it at your fingertips. One thing that I just want to share before I kick off is, what's my role really? And it's integral to ensuring that the state has a comprehensive, bold workforce strategy. Think of me as the conductor, the lighthouse out on the peak, out on the island, letting people know, if you look at our state agencies, our workforce ecosystem, and our workforce ecosystem is gigantic in the state of Indiana. Partners like Ascend, the state agencies, higher ed, one of the most important, industry. So bringing everyone together to make sure that we're boldly building Indiana's talent pipeline for the future. So a few things, and I'll touch maybe on two just because of time. Those of you in the state of Indiana, you might be familiar with the Work One offices, underneath the Department of Workforce Development. Every state, most states have a similar setup, but there are training programs. There are programs out there to support, and I'll touch on two. One, you as a company, one is, it's called the Employer Training Grant. So, and this applies to the HVAC industry and really going back to the credentialing or credentials of value. So when you do this training, as long as you can show that you're really giving your employee a credential of value, every year, this is $50,000 per year that you can leverage, and it's $5,000 per individual. So that's from an employer view. When you look at the next level jobs, Workforce Ready Grant, that's one that is specific for individuals. But what I want to call out is there's 12 workforce regions within the state of Indiana, and they have a Work One office. Go meet with them. Talk to them. I mean, you don't have to spend a lot of time, 60 minutes, and they can walk you through those available programs that are statewide. And in many cases, or in some cases, I should say, there are specific programs within the region that can support workforce training programs to help offset some of your costs from a training standpoint. One last one that I'll call out. In July, the Lowe's Foundation announced across multiple areas across the country a program to support and ramp up HVAC programs. Ivy Tech in the state of Indiana received $700,000 to lift that up across the state. I will call out it's Anderson, Bloomington, Evansville, Indianapolis, Muncie, South Bend, Elkhart, and Terre Haute. So my recommendation is if you're in one of those areas or just in general, reach out to Ivy Tech to see how you can plug in, because they're going to have a pipeline of workforce that can support you today, tomorrow, and in the future.
That's great. Yeah, at UpSmith, we've had probably $500,000 of incentives we've been able to find on behalf of our clients in the last 6 months. Yeah. Jim, who's in the back there, Jim, wave your hand. He'll lead a lot of that work for us. And so if you're interested in learning more about these programs, or maybe you don't have a big compliance team, shocker, inside of your small business, we can be helpful and help to map them out and be your partner in applying and being able to encourage more investment in your workforce through that channel too.
That's a significant thing that we just when we come to conferences like this, it's like, yeah, that's great for you, but how am I meant to get it done? And we've just rattled off half a dozen things to make it affordable, resources to help carry the program weight. And, I don't think you're getting out of the building without being sort of accosted. So I would challenge everybody to take action. You can have any opinion you want about this, but the price of that opinion is participation. So you've just heard some great resources.
Yeah. We have 1 million openings in U.S. manufacturing construction right now, today. And if people can have an opportunity to learn at work and be coached and developed in the programs that you guys are investing in, that is the game changer. Because it solves so many problems for the learner when you know where you're going to be, you know what wages are going to look like. And so this is the way we solve the problem for the country. It's investing in the people in this room who are investing in workforce. And we're really excited to be your partner for that. Go ahead.
Just one more thing. Awareness, and engagement. So go tell your world-changing, world-impacting story to high school students. There are so many high school students that graduate. In the state of Indiana, the Department of Education is focused on the day after, making sure they have a plan. But there are so many high school students that don't have a plan. And if you go out and tell your story, you're going to change the life of an individual, and they're going to come into your industry.
Yep. All right, last question to Stephanie, and then we're going to the room for your questions. So best practices for skills-based apprenticeship. What are you seeing?
Just do it. That's sort of the short answer right now. Okay. So, seriously though, just do it. That's the short answer. If you're not already investing in your workforce, if you don't have programs, if you're not on the front line thinking about, training on the job and apprenticeship, you're already behind, and we're here to help you. So just to be clear, it's that everyone's trying to figure this out, but there are incentives, there are partnerships. So just do it. I loved your point of just pick something and do it, but I do want to be a little more practical for you all. I think one thing we help companies do when we try to understand what their needs are is first figure out your biggest problems. So what is it? Is it a sourcing problem? Is it a retention problem? Where does that problem lie? And I want to challenge you to understand what's it costing you today. In these conversations, a lot of times it's like, oh, I have a fire and I got to go do this and it's going to cost me X. Well, what's it costing you today to not have that entry-level workforce? Are you getting more turnover? Are your people burning out? Are you not able to take on big contracts? So you have to think about what is that full picture of what that return or what that cost is today to your business for not doing something like this. Because then we can actually build a case for why you should invest in something. And it can help you actually sell if you're the leader of your company, great. Or the folks that you have to sell on this, your finance team, which tends to be my hardest critic sometimes. But you got to sell them on why this is actually going to lead to more revenue, better employee retention, and it's going to cost you less to put that money on the front end than it is to put you on the back end. And so I don't think you were asking that exact question, but I think it starts with readying your company to do this. You also have to make sure you have the right people in the right seats to have those conversations. So if you're doing ROI, that's one set of people. If it's the trainers, if it's the people in your company today who you're going to tap on the shoulder and say, hey, can you be a trainer? It's really making sure that they have the skills and the aptitude and the support to be able to do that. They might know their job, which is really important, but you also have to know how to teach it. You have to know how to train it. And sometimes those skills are a little bit different. A few things on the back end. Once you get started, you get excited, you get everybody lined up internally. On the back end, it's really important. I think you know this for apprenticeship, but you have to pay while they're on the job. We need you to pay them because it allows us to bring in a good talent pool to you that wants to come work for you. And they're going to take it seriously. You value what you pay for. If you don't pay your folks, you're probably not going to get the same kinds of people showing up and the retention that you want in these programs. I think the resourcing is really important. So not only for the pay, but maybe you give a bonus to those trainers. Maybe you elevate them, you promote them. You think about ways to continue to sort of elevate and lift the different people that it requires to make this type of program really successful. And the last piece here, they already talked about it a few different times, but I want to talk about marketing, awareness, and partnership all kind of in one big breath here. I think I had written down coordinated marketing and awareness, star, and they all touched on it. We can't have a successful internal employer-led training program if people don't know what you're doing and they don't see your message. So we've already hit on that. I won't spend too much time there. But partnership, you just heard a charge. Go talk to your governor's office. Go talk to your mayor's office. I know you might be skeptical of government. We're Republicans, mostly in Indiana. I get it. Go talk to them because they have the power of the resource and they have the power of the bully pulpit to tell your story on your behalf and then to help you figure out solutions to solve those problems. Governors and mayors care a lot about what business has to say. So use your voice, go out and talk, and let's see if we can get you connected to something to be able to then build your program and sustain your program over time.
Amen. I love it. Questions from the group? Yes, sir. If you wouldn't mind, say your name and where you're from.
Oh, yeah. So I'm Aaron out of Oregon. I was going to yell. So my name is Aaron out of Oregon. We're in a small rural area down there. I will agree with everything the panel's saying. We had developed a 6 to 8 tier training ranking system for both service techs and installers, especially with the younger generation. They want that growth. So them being stagnant in a position for 2 to 3 years isn't good or healthy. I went out to the local educational school district, which partners with all the school districts years ago, started talking to them in high school levels and the local community college, try to put programs together. The other thing is in-house training program. I've been doing that for a couple of years. My question around the for you guys, the one thing I've kind of struggled with is keeping good employees retention. That is fairly easy, and I am good at that. Are you guys doing basically a non-compete or anything like that as you are training and you're investing? Now, obviously, for me, this is a business expense, so the training program is built into the expense of the company.
Right.
Ultimately, the customer pays for that. That should be transparent. So we're not really losing money per se if an employee does leave us after going through the program. But it does cost money and it takes time, and you have to rechange the personalities and change not just the skill set, but the way they think. So low turnover for me is very important. So I do have a non-compete on mine, but I'm curious what you guys are doing for non-competes on that.
Jeff, would you want to lead on that one?
Yeah, sure. Aaron, we don't use non-competes. We truly don't. But in states where we can't do it in all of them, we do have a 12-month contract of employment. And it's staged. We have a value of our training. And if they leave 6 months, then they're due half of that back, right? And the theory is if I train up somebody and I give them to you, and at 1 year and 1 day they leave, maybe you need to look at what you're doing to not keep them. So we do not use non-competes for ours. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. We don't use them. We just use the 12-month employment contract in the states where we can.
Good thought, Eddie.
Yeah. Do you like non-competes? Do you like having one? You've been on the receiving end of one?
No, I have not.
No. Oh, yeah. So
I think it's kind of everyone in the room that's kind of in the situation is if I'm going to invest $20,000 in training, I should get something.
what can you do to
return.
protect?
Exactly.
Right. Totally get it.
Because the amount of what I found personally is the amount of knowledge that we are distributing in a 6-month period is almost enough knowledge to go open a truck and be a competitor of ours.
Absolutely.
And we are not in a large town. The entire county that we live in is 120,000. So it is a very small area. And so there's only 6 or 7 heating and cooling contractors, period. And so 3 of those competitors of ours used to work for us.
Right.
So it is a situation where we do put up that knowledge, so much indeed, that it's very easy for them to become a competitor of ours and make twice that amount of money.
Yeah.
And then say, hey, I used to work for this company and that company has a great reputation. So in theory.
So do I. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the reason I asked that is because I've seen non-competes being used by managers before. And let me be clear, as long as you're upfront about whatever the agreement that you're getting into is, clearly, I think you can do whatever you want. I just have never really seen it handled well on the back end because it's more about the people that didn't leave and what they hear about the actions that were taken afterwards. I think you got to balance the equation on both sides. It's not so much about the people that leave. It's like, oh, did you hear Jim left and they made him pay $5,000 back? And I think prorated, for every month you're here, doing it in the form of tool allowance, I would just invert it and say the longer you're here, this is what you get. You get, priority status on we're going to ask you first about the 4th of July and do you want to work? We're going what else can you do on the positive end of the experience that is meaningful enough that even if they leave and come back, they're going to start at the beginning again. So maybe it's not worth going over there for $1. So I think it's the way you do anything is the way you do everything. And your culture is just defined by the sum total of how your employees feel, not just what you're doing to them, but what they're doing there. And we all, like when I left my company 20 years ago, we were a bunch of guys and we liked each other, but they weren't calling and seeing how I was doing and checking my feelings were okay. Because that's not what we did. But now they're hyper connected. And I know 2 things. The first day they go into that new job and they're in a meeting before the manager shows up, the meeting before the meeting, they're going to say, how was it over there? And that's your chance to tell that story. Yeah, they stuck me as I left. I knew it was coming, but I'm going to make them work for it. Or, you know what? They were tough. I've never learned as much as I can. And I can't say I won't go back there. But yeah, I'm excited to be here. That's a different story. That's a different narrative. And that's just as much a part of your brand experience as anything you put in a billboard.
Yep.
Is that fair?
I definitely think that there's nothing good about a non-compete, and it doesn't make people feel good. Without a non-compete, because the non-compete was introduced about a year ago for about 3 different employees. And it was a full across the board agreement from the immediate day of the interview all the way to what they signed on for. So complete transparency on paper, on a ranking system of multiple tiers. And as you work for the company, kind of like a workforce agreement, then that non-compete goes down and down. So as we work another year, that non-compete goes down a year and so on.
That's creative. Yeah.
So it kind of balances itself out at about 2 to 3 year mark. And by that time we can see that return on investment quite thoroughly. Yeah. I just wanted to kind of get, some professionals' opinions about it, because I haven't been able to talk to anyone that is doing in-house training the same way that I am.
Yep.
And, although I'm not putting out 1,000 people or whatever, it's only been a few, in the last couple of years.
It matters.
It is important.
Yep.
Yes.
It's a great question. Thank you.
It's an excellent question. I'll end with one other thought that built on what they said, because we've seen a lot of companies tackle this challenge. Sometimes unintended things happen that you don't intend to happen. So demand goes down. You can't give people as many hours as you wanted to. All of a sudden they're caught because they're not able to get enough cash flow by being deployed to cover their costs, but they can't leave because they've got this cudgel of the promissory note or the non-compete that's binding them. And so one of the things that we've seen work really well is if you do what Eddie alluded to, where you have an abundance mindset and there's always something to gain by staying, whether it's more training, more investment, more upward mobility, clarity about where I'm going, and culture drives retention. Mm-hmm. Even within the same company, we've seen massive changes in retention just based on the culture of the branch and the service manager. Mm-hmm. And did I feel like that person was in my corner, or did I feel like that was a bit of a adverse relationship? And so I can tell by the questions you ask and being here, like you're an abundance framed leader who's like thinking about how to make a great culture, and that's going to serve you super well. So thank you for asking. Other questions? Yes, ma'am. And would you mind sharing your name and where you're from too as you pose it, and he'll bring the mic over?
Get it, Matt.
Sure about it. My name's Renee Lucas, LCS Heating and Cooling here in Indianapolis. So we, for the first time this year, heard about the training grant that you were talking about, and have taken advantage of it. It's fantastic. So thank you very much for those resources. Just one kind of comment. We'd never heard about any of this stuff. And as a small business owner, I hadn't taken the time to do any searches or things like that. So I don't know if there's anything more that can be done. And I actually heard about it from another contractor, to even get the information out to distributors and to us somehow. I'm not sure how that would be without me going to look for it, but it's something that I was just not aware of at all. My next question is, are there any kind of grants, or can the training grant be used to build out your own training center? The one thing that we did find, a lot of the training that we have sent our technicians and installers to have been out of state, because we just haven't had a lot of opportunity here in Indiana, and the travel expenses for all of that is not covered under the grant. And so we had quite a bit of expense within our budget, to use the grant because of the travel expenses. And so our next step is building a training center, keeping everybody here, recruiting more jobs and things like that. And so is there any assistance for something like that to do some build out?
So 2 great questions. I think you've heard all of us talk about awareness, and it's a great opportunity on many fronts. I don't have a good answer for that today. I think a piece like when you're getting together, in conferences like this, is talking about it, right? You've got a specific example in Indiana. I'm going to put money on it that those that aren't from the state of Indiana are going to go back to their home state, Oregon, as an example, and ask those questions. Get out and talk to the mayor, the governor, those elected officials, just to try to understand. Go to your equivalent Work One office to see what's out there. Ask the questions. The worst question you can ask is the question you don't ask. As far as are there, investments that the state of Indiana has to make for companies looking to stand up a physical structure to hire people to create jobs? What I would offer is when I'm walking off the stage, I'm going to give you my card and connect you with our business development group just to see what is available out there. Are you are you investing in capital expenditures? Are you creating jobs? Those are two things that are usually the first questions that are asked that keep the conversation going. So again, I will share my contact information and connect you with our team to really dive in to see what opportunities are out there for you. So that's okay.
I'm just going to put my ACCA hat on for a second. One of these things is connect and learn. We're all here, but we have the email forum every day. Somebody in your state will be watching that. You can set up, it comes to your email, your inbox every morning. Connect. It's a great question. I'm taking a note on behalf of, I was thinking, if only there was a national organization that existed to help it's you, idiot. And so I think that's something that maybe we can do. And, but I would say just, ask the question. Yep. And that in and of itself is awareness for other people as well. So great question.
I'll compliment Jeff and Dave and the ARS team. They have definitely made a big investment in physical training sites. For contractors who have less resources for building a physical classroom out, we've seen a model work super well where you combine virtual training with on-the-job ride-alongs and the apprenticeship model, which is old as time, but use technology to provide back and forth feedback from the apprentice to the coach and the coach to the apprentice. And then having someone who is there as a 1099 contractor to be the coach. And now it's not a question of is that the direct instructor, it's the person helping me with my homework. So I had this module, and now I'm applying this fundamentals of the compression system through this coach. And we'd be happy to share more about that model and how it works well if it was interesting to you through Jim or other people on the team.
And Wyatt, just to add one quick note, and it may not be right for this example, so clear on that. But the other place where there's a lot of physical space that's invested in by states is community colleges. And so, or sort of those local technical colleges also. And so again, may not be right in this space, but a lot of times they have that physical space. And so you can actually partner with them to figure out if there's a way to build a lab or to even your career and technical education, your K through 12 centers. They have a lot of buildings that are paid for by the state. And so if there are ways to partner with some of those institutions, again, may not be right in this case, but we've seen that be really successful where industry can send folks to labs that already exist. Maybe you do partner directly with the education provider, or maybe it's more like a lab, but that's another resource that we've seen be really successful in this space as well.
Well said. Time for one last question. Look at the big boss. We got one more.
What's the chances this is going to be like a nice, easy one?
That's right.
Low chance.
While he's doing that, show of hands, who has a program in-house, whether it's for one person or 10, that gets somebody from newbie to being able to be on their own? Okay, so if I was thinking about that,
that's great.
Keep your hands up. If I was thinking about this and going, what's my next step? There it is. Grab them. Don't let them leave the room. Just change business cards, and then I don't know of a more open industry than this one. We joke about robbing and duplicate. Well, I don't know if we're all lonely, but call us. We'll take the call. We'll answer the questions. You guys have helped me more than I think I've helped you. So find that person that had the hand up and just ask for it.
And Eddie, maybe if you do share your wisdom on what you've done, maybe you won't be worried about a non-compete, because then everybody is doing some investment in training, which is good for the whole sector.
A rising tide lifts all boats, right?
Exactly right.
Hi, Clifton Beck from ESCO Institute in HVAC Excellence. So I appreciate you talking about Ivy Tech. So Ivy Tech actually just completed their HVAC Excellence accreditation so that they're meeting recognized standards. And I applaud ARS for their program. I'm very aware of their apprenticeship program. It is a very qualified program. As a Hoosier educator and contractor, I also see programs that are registered apprenticeship programs with the state, with contractors that on the personal level, I question whether they meet standards. So is there applications or monitoring of registered apprenticeship programs to recognize that they're meeting expectations of those young students and technicians going through the program, like evaluations along the way or certain hours of apprenticeship programs?
Easy.
Sorry.
The market
do you want me to start?
Start?
Okay,
Yep.
perfect. So, if it's a registered program, then in Indiana, it's registered through the Department of Labor, which is a federal agency, and it is their job to make sure on the front end when someone is being signed up for that registered apprenticeship to make sure that all of the boxes are sort of checked on the front end of that experience. And so that doesn't get at your question though of like who does that ongoing oversight and monitoring. And there are reporting guidelines, and there actually has to be an entity in Indiana that helps with that registration. So a business can be that. They can be the go-between between their program and the Department of Labor. Or you heard Tony talking about there are intermediaries such as workforce boards or others who can play that role. If it's you as the company, you have a higher responsibility to make sure that when you're reporting that quality box is checked. And the Department of Labor is also involved in making sure that, hey, you said in this year, these were the hours, these were the things that are being done. So they also check on that. But if you're partnering with a registered intermediary like a workforce board, they also are responsible for making sure that quality bar is being met. So that's what I know conceptually. But Tony, anything else you'd add from the state perspective?
I think you nailed it.
Okay. That doesn't mean that all programs are created equal. Just to be clear, I think you're absolutely right. And this is something we've talked a little bit, even with the Department of Labor, about really understanding as we look at the next generation of apprenticeship and we look at, the system, the registered system was created, for apprenticeship 100 years ago, which doesn't mean there's not wonderful things still involved in that system, but there's been a lot more questions still about what is the sort of newer version of that. And there's a lot of talk at the federal level right now about how do you continue to reform and improve that system, look at all the people here who are doing training. Maybe you'd want that to be an apprenticeship because you'd actually get recognized. You can access new funding pools federally or statewide. And because the person that goes through it gets a credential that is really useful both to them and to other employers. So I don't have a great answer for what do we do about the actors who maybe aren't living up. I think it kind of goes back to what you guys said that if you're running one of these, it's your responsibility to make sure you're living up to the standards and to what you've promised in terms of what you told talent you're going to do for them and you're going to do with them.
One last thing I'd add is if there's something out there is, go to the Department of Workforce Development. They've got, someone that's focused on that program and just bring up maybe observation or concern.
Please join me in thanking the panel this morning for joining us. This was great. Awesome job.
I need to help.